I now call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order at 7:24 p.m. We'll now take a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't see that we have media students here from Auburn tonight. So we'll move on then to recognizing and celebrating outstanding. I got to do roll call first, excuse me. The coordinator call the roll.
Ms. Jackson?
Present.
Mr. Rollins?
Here.
Mr. Scrivano?
Here.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Here.
Dr. Harner?
Here.
Mr. Connor?
Here.
Mrs. Powers?
Present.
With 7 present, we have a quorum.
Okay, now we'll do recognition and celebration of outstanding contributions of our students and staff. And I think Mary is doing the presentation tonight, right? Mary Call.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Sure.
The Finance Department, led by Chief Financial Officer Cedric Lewis, won the Association of School Business Officials Meritorious Budget Award. And Jeff Staley from ING Financial Partners will present the award.
I'd like to present this award on behalf of ASBO, as she had previously said, in ING. And I'd like Cedric to come forward and accept his award. And as I discussed with Cedric, it has many more blanks for many more years if he wins.
Okay, thank you for being here, and congratulations to Cedric and his team.
And there's more.
Okay.
Rockford Public Schools were well represented in recent state competitions. Congratulations to the following team and students. The Guilford High School cheerleaders who went to state, Auburn High School swimmer Connor Bullard, who competed in the 500 free, and East High School journalism student Ann D. Johnson, who finished 5th in the state journalism competition for sports writing. We're proud of these students and the staff and their friends and families for their support. Want to come on up?
Sure. Have you? We're going to have you go around and shake everyone's hand here. Okay, all right? All right, there we go.
I was confused.
Yeah. He was the swimmer from East, right? I think. Yeah.
That was Connor.
Yeah.
Okay, we have one more. Auburn High School boys basketball coach Brian Ott could not be here tonight, but he was again named Nick 10 Boys Coach of the Year. He received the award in 2012 as well. He's coached at Auburn since 1999. This year, Ott coached the team to a sectional championship win. Thank you very much, Coach Ott.
Congratulations, Brian. Thank you all for being here. We're very proud of you. We are now at the petitions and communications portion of our meeting when we invite the public to make comments. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution guarantees the rights of citizens to petition their government, as well as provides for freedom of speech. Also, the Illinois School Code requires that there be time at regular and special meetings for public comment. Thus, we are following those mandates during this petitions and communications portions of our agenda. According to the Board Policy 2.230, the public comments portion of the meeting is limited to 30 minutes. The board will not respond to comments at this time. If it's appropriate, you will be contacted in a timely manner by staff in response to your questions. In order to allow sufficient time for the business of the board and conduct our meeting in an efficient and effective manner, we are requesting that you comply with the guidelines that are posted, and each speaker will be allowed no more than 2 minutes to address the board. It is not appropriate to address individual board members or individual administrators or discuss matters that would otherwise be confidential in such open meetings. 2 names will be called at one time, the one whose turn it is to speak and the person who will speak next. When you are the second person, please come to the front and sit in a vacant chair. And I also want to point out that we do have a clock on the wall to help you with your timing. Shows you the remaining time for the 2-minute period. So our first speaker tonight is Arthur Jackson, to be followed by Jeannie Westholder. Sir, can I have you hit the button there to turn the mic on?
Absolutely. Taught at the Rockford School District since 1993. And it just saddens me that the patterns and practices of discrimination and child abuse in this district have continued for so long. One example where a child needed reading assistance at an IEP meeting and had his reading time reduced from 30 minutes a day to 30 minutes a week. I received an angry call from downtown because I didn't agree with this. Because you just think about it, how much can a child's reading improve with the equivalent of reading 6 minutes a day? Moreover, I reported, and folks who were there know this, that children were being locked outside in freezing temperatures, ice cold freezing temperatures as punishment. We shouldn't do that to our children. When I reported that, I was moved very quickly to a moldy, isolated room with leaks and no windows. The principal was aware of this toxic room, as we had a mutual friend who warned me about the room. Mold was growing on top of asbestos according to the district's own work orders, and it leaked continuously. I requested a room change, and that was denied. So I was forced to stay in this toxic room for years, and it affected my health in a number of ways. It caused a disability for me, headaches, just a whole host of things that could have been fixed. And I'm requesting a remedy from the board and coverage for my medical expenses.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Jackson. And Jeannie Westholder, to be followed by Jane Hayes.
Good evening, Superintendent Jarrett, members of the board, and central office administrators. I attend this evening tonight as a former school board member, district level, steering committee member for student assignment, and as a mom. Questions. People need to ask questions. Are we asleep or are we truly not listening? I ask myself, isn't this situation similar to the story of the Emperor's New Clothes? On May 3rd, I became disturbed by the meeting schedule for the facilities changes and by what appears once again to be a disproportionate burden of the proposed plans on the disadvantaged and poor among us. My main reservations with the current plan are: 1, community input sessions, are not scheduled when working people can attend. My school board rep, Mr. Rollins, said the task force committee created the meeting schedule, not our elected officials who are responsible directly to the public and taxpayers. Please advertise sessions on school marquees. Perhaps District 205 Communications Department can help. Please also find a solution to something other than saying to folks, we are not taking questions. Please find another solution. Number 2, creation of mega elementary schools. On what research are you and the task force basing the creation of mega elementary schools? Is this not the exact type of proposal that sent us down the road to the People Who Care lawsuit? Have we learned so little, and are our memories so short? What are the specifics and the demographics? What are the real numbers? Number 4, no mention of the 1st through 5th grade Renaissance Gifted Academy relocation to Haight Elementary on the Comparing the Plans and Maps What the 3 Plans Have in Common section on the website. Number 5, a community leader stated recently that equity in education, especially in this town, is not possible and is a waste of time and energy. Hopefully our school board members know and understand that consciousness about equity and equitable decisions is their responsibility. I was grateful that someone finally, though, was honest about the truth. I asked that person if they were ready to share their thoughts about equity and education in front of the community at an open school board meeting. Can you guess their answer?
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Jeannie. Jane Hayes, to be followed by Kate Schnell.
I haven't been before you for a while, but I'm still bringing my props. Yesterday, I had the distinct displeasure of attending Westview Elementary School, and I do thank you for this card because it told me of the time. However, 14 of the meetings had already been held, and when I entered the building, I noticed so few buses, which means dollar signs. We're not transporting those kids. Those are neighborhood kids that attend Westview. And they have a strong, united parent front. The grandparents are involved. And when I heard this, my Irish was flaring. This was told to their staff. No matter how many Westview t-shirts you wear, you're still on the chopping block. Well, guess what? We're out to wear them once again, because the questions to their answers were not given. I cannot believe for a public forum you had the gall not to stand before us and answer questions. That is just a real error in judgment. Yes, it was hot in there, but think about all the students who have to endure that, and the faculty that has to endure that day in, day out. That's a Northwest Side school, well attended. Their playground was from efforts put in by their loyal parents and grandparents. And I cannot believe the absence of leadership in this misdirected community session. Now today I heard they were much better with Todd Schmidt and Cedric Lewis, so I applaud you for that, because I will be attending more to just see if their questions are answered. And if you can't stand the heat, God forbid, get out of that kitchen.
Hayes? Kate Schnell? Oh, there you are. I'm sorry, I didn't see you, Kate.
Yeah, I know, I'm so...
Okay.
I'm going to burn my 2 minutes on code of conduct. I think it's going to be addressed tonight. Everyone, starting at the top from President Obama, has urged to move away from punitive to preventative measures, keeping kids in school and out of the school to prison pipeline. I've got articles I could gladly send you from New York City to Syracuse to Cleveland to Madison on social programs that they're going to implement to have to spend a little more money, hire a few more people, but to stay away from getting a book this thick. One of Linda Ramsey, I'm sure she won't mind me mentioning her name, she FOIA'd and got the out-of-school suspension for students for 2012, 2013 secondary schools. 1.5 inches thick. There's probably 42 infractions per page. I don't know exactly how many pages. We looked at different items like 2012, 2013 out-of-school suspensions for tardies alone and broke it down by schools, whether it was 1 day, 2 day, 3, 4, 5 days. It totaled to 5,346 days of out-of-school suspensions for tardies alone. Now, if you like to look at that in dollars, think of that as $30 to $50 a day per kid that's out of school for 5,346 days. And you could probably hire for 5 ALE teachers to keep kids in school. And kids say the dangest things. Oh, we broke this down, by the way, by building student race, reason, duration of out-of-school suspension. And please, anybody who wants to look at it, it's interesting.
Thank you, Kate.
More
Thank
than
you for your
like to share
comments.
it.
We are now at the board member comment section. Are there any board members that have comments at this time that they'd like to speak to? Mr. Connor?
Yep, number one, congratulations to the Auburn Jazz and Concert Bands. They did very well in Cincinnati. And Isaac Lecca, I hope I have that name right, won an award for a trumpet solo. Also coming up is the Budding Artists, which is at Burpee Museum Friday, May 16th. And that's where students around the area through the Kiwanis Club are up for scholarships of $500 and $1,000. And each art department receives $250, and that includes Auburn, East, Guilford, Jefferson, and Roosevelt, as well as other area schools. So congrats to everybody on that.
Thank you. Ms. Powers?
Shout out to Coach Ott, who's a fantastic coach and just a very good teacher and mentor to the young men that he coaches over at Auburn and to his support staff. He really does a fine job, and that recognition is the least of what's important to him, but I'm glad that he gets it. I wanted to just mention that I will not be supporting the code of conduct tonight because I attended two of the meetings, and at both of the meetings, it was very clear, based on what Ms. Schnell just said, that the feeling of the people there was that a consequence for a child for tardies to put them out of school is counterintuitive, counterproductive. It's not helping us get these kids to want to be in school. The two administrators that were there from two of the high schools where this is a major issue, it's not an issue at elementary, it's barely an issue at middle. It is an issue at our four high schools, Roosevelt not so much. And when half of the administrators are loud and clear about the fact that they want to reset the counter on tardies at semester, and that gets overridden, I can't support that policy. Nor can I support taking the time that community members and parents and administrators spent putting into the code of conduct just to having that more or less vetoed in a small room with select people. That's not my idea of process and good outcomes. So I will not be supporting code of conduct tonight. Further, I find it interesting that I just received my booklet on the 10-year facility plan on Friday, by the way, and I find it interesting that this can be 4-color glossy, and it's only got probably a 60-day lifetime, but our code of conduct is in black and white, and this lives for a year. That's just not the way I like to do business. I don't think that that is being customer-centric. Our parents, our students, if it's worth it for this, it's worth it for this. So I will not be supporting it. Thank you.
Any other board member comments? Dr. Harner?
I just wanted to acknowledge and thank all of the parents that participated in the one of the board initiatives is middle school evaluation, and we had 4 very robust, spirited input sessions from well over 100 people that showed up at the 4 meetings, and so it was. I just want to thank and acknowledge those folks for coming out and giving input on that issue.
Thank you. Any other comments? Not. We are now at the consent portion of our agenda, including the following consent items: meeting minutes of April 22nd, 2014, payroll, accounts payable, purchase orders, contracts under $10,000, air travel. Following bid recommendations, 14-30, which is nurse staffing coverage, RFP number 14-43, strategic planning services, 14-46, drug testing and medical services, IFB number 14-62, Jefferson High School bleacher remodel, recurring contracts, a contract for Danielson evaluating training, and other consent items including builders, risk insurance renewal, establishment of regular meeting place and date,
permanent operating transfer, resolution and notice of public hearing on the tentative budget for 2014 and 2015, approval of the Treasurer's Public Office Bond, Special Issue Bond Annual Premium, and the Freedom of Information Act log. Is there a motion and a second to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Second. By Mr. Rollins, seconded by Mr. Connor. Are there any consent items that board members wish to have pulled for separate consideration? Mr. Rollins?
10D.
10D, okay. Ms. Jackson?
7E,
7E,
8A, 8B,
okay.
8D,
8D, okay.
9A.
Okay. The coordinator call the roll. I'm sorry, Ms. McCullough.
Did 10C get pulled?
No.
I did not hear it. Okay.
Okay, 10C.
I would like 10C pulled, please.
Okay. Any others? If not, I'll have the coordinator call the roll on consent items that have not been pulled for separate consideration.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, I'll now take a motion for the approval of 7E, contracts under 10,000.
So moved. Oh, second.
And seconded by Mr. Rollins. Discussion?
Yes, I'd
Ms.
like
Jackson?
for someone to speak to all of the contracts. There are 2, 4, 5 of them.
Okay. Would that be Mr. Lewis, maybe?
Actually, with the exception of Tim Adams, it looks like.
Mrs. Jackson, can you tell us what number you're on the agenda?
7E, contracts under 10,000.
Mrs. Jackson, what additional information would you like beyond the written report?
Daily consultant fee.
Okay.
Who is that working with?
That's me.
Mr. Weisman?
Yes. So the Consortium for Educational Change is working with us right now to do what's called a self-assessment. They are working with multiple members of our district office, then we'll work with principals and teachers. It's part of the planning that will lead up to the strategic part of the planning processes and major data points leading up to the strategic planning process, so that we can go into the strategic planning process with some data points about current strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in the district.
The strategic planning services?
We are doing that to prepare for the strategic planning process.
So the daily fee for this consultant looks like it's $935?
If that
Well, it says daily consultant fee $900, and then I guess travel time is $35. So it's $935 per day for this consultant to come in.
I don't remember the specifics of that contract. We've been working through a lot of contracts with CEC right now, but if it's on the page,
How about the on-site training one day? It's the Polar Electro.
Dr. Wolf, is that you?
I'm not quite sure why this is under there, because we brought it to the board separately, because that contract put the hold with that company over $10,000. It was approved a while back, and it was one-day training with the heart rate monitors that are part of the Healthy Bodies, Healthy Minds initiative.
So this should not be on here?
We'd have to go back in the minutes, but I believe that we brought that forward to the board separately because while this was under $10,000, the aggregate during the fiscal year with the company was over $10,000. And I'm looking for...
I don't know if this is a delayed reporting or not, so the process is that if we have an under $10,000 contract, if our office, the legal office, gets a second one that would put it over the limit, we require it to go to the board. And so I'm not sure if this is just a delayed reporting to put it on through this mechanism or not, or through the board, I'm not sure.
It appears it was approved at the last board meeting.
I don't know if they combine the two, is my recollection. I don't.
Do we need to pull it for clarification or no?
It was already approved. I'm not sure why it's showing up here because I did the executive summary and even highlighted the board policy 2.172 when the aggregate over $10,000 was over. So I don't know why it's on here.
Okay. So you can amend it and pull it?
The services were already delivered based on the prior approval of the board for this contract.
So we'll pull it then. Okay. Ms. Jackson, was there other?
Yeah, it's the kids at core.
Kids at core?
Yeah, understanding para. Is that something for our teachers that says professional development, understanding para?
And so we provided, we provided professional development, provided administrative academy for understanding the new law of how to incorporate student growth into teacher evaluation. So it was an overview of what the law contains as well as what everyone is doing in the state of Illinois.
And then the fit for duty evaluations, is that HR?
Yes.
Speak to, is that something that they do a certain number or?
It's hard to determine the exact number, so we typically at the beginning of the school year have an open PO, and as needed, it gets used, but it may not get used at all. In some cases, it does.
Any other questions on 7E, contracts under 10,000? Now I'll have the coordinator call the roll on 7E.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
No.
The motion passes with 6 yeses and 1 no.
I'll take a motion for item 8A, which is the nurse staffing coverage bid.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor. Second by Ms. Powers. Discussion or questions?
Yes, if
Ms.
someone
Jackson.
could present on it or speak to it, please.
Is that you, Angel, that would speak on that, or is that? Okay.
It's actually submitted by Mary Fisher, so you're the second name.
Sure, Ms. Soley.
This bid was for additional services when we needed to hire individuals to either fill in for certain vacancies or to fill in for the day. So it provides staffing services as needed for students.
Any other questions?
Is the awarder a local organization? It looks like Invo Healthcare.
No, we don't base it upon local, but they do have an RN supervisor that is hired locally, and then, of course, the staff is local, but the actual entity is not local.
Okay, I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of 8A nursing staff coverage.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
I'll now take a motion for the approval of the strategic planning service, item 8B.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Dr. Harner. Any questions or discussion?
Again,
Jackson.
brief explanation of what this service is for.
This is Mr. Weisman, I believe.
Definitely.
This was covered at our quarterly
Correct.
retreat. Okay.
So we did discuss this at the board, at the quarterly retreat. Brief overview is that Visualize 2015, the district strategic plan that we currently function under will be sunsetting, and during the next fiscal year, we need to undergo a process to incorporate strategic and stakeholder feedback for the creation of a new strategic plan for the board to create and adopt. The Consortium for Educational Change was chosen through an RFP process to facilitate that with us.
Okay, any other questions? Now I'll have the coordinator call the roll on item 8B.
I do have another question.
I'm sorry, Ms.
So
Jackson,
can you
go ahead.
clarify, can you say that one more time? Because you talked about the connection between the contract under 10,000 and this one for 50,000. What's the connection again?
The contract for under 10,000 is pre-work that we are using to prepare for the strategic plan that will occur this fiscal year. The current bid that you're looking at currently begins July 1 and runs through next fiscal year, for the next fiscal year. Part of one of the facilitated sessions is a data retreat, and for the data retreat, often one of the main points of examination is a district self-assessment. So we are preparing the self-assessment currently to be ready for the data retreat that will happen in the fall.
Okay, so I guess I'm wondering, so there's a reason why we couldn't put this all together under one contract, why we had to have separate one under 10,000 and one for 50?
There will actually be an additional contract coming forth for additional work that will happen next year from the Consortium for Educational Change. The under 10,000 contract was something that we wanted to be able to start on and work through yet this fiscal year, and their strategic planning process relies on the self-assessment but won't begin until the fall. So we just separated them out. I apologize if that's an inconvenience.
So what's the total price then on this strategic planning? So we have 10,000, 50,000, you said there's another contract that'll be coming. What's the price on that one?
The self-assessment, we could do a strategic planning process without the self-assessment. It's just not best practice. So what we bid out on was the strategic planning facilitation, and that is going to run us about $30,000. The contract can be extended up to $50,000 if the core planning team decides that they want to utilize Consortium for Educational Change in addition to the framework that they put forward. So the additional contract with the Consortium for Educational Change really is going to address the needs for us to move forward strategically with some core initiatives of the district, including peer assistance review, teacher evaluation, utilizing our instructional council, and Consortium for Educational Change is a partner that with the REA, we've been able to make some really great strategic progress on core issues with our relationship and with the teachers union, between the teachers and district leadership. So there's a handful of things that are going to come forward with CEC on a separate contract that's going to be about another $50,000 for strategic improvement.
Thank you. I guess I would just add a comment that at our quarterly retreat meeting, the REA leadership was in full-fledged support of this selection.
Yes, thank you.
Of this group. So I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of the strategic planning services.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
No.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses and 1 no.
I'll now take a motion for the approval of the Jefferson High School bleacher remodel.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Mr. Connor, second by Mr. Rollins. Any questions on the bleachers?
Hi, Mr. Schmidt, did you present on this at operations? I might have missed it because I came in late, so if you could recap.
I just notified, in part of the update that we had upcoming bid packages and awards, that this is the part of the remodeling of the gymnasium at Jefferson is to replace the bleachers, and that did come in under budget. Pretty much what I presented at ops.
Any other questions? None, I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of the Jefferson High School bleacher remodel.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Ms. McCulloch, you pulled 10C, not 9C. Okay, all right, okay, thank you, okay. 9A, I'll take a motion for the approval of the contract for Danielson Evaluating Training.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Rollins, second by Mr. Connor. Questions? Ms. Jackson?
Is this Mr. Wolf?
This is Dr. Wolf.
Hi, I'm Ashley Van Thiel. I'm the Director of Professional Development. The Performance Evaluation Reform Act, otherwise known as PARA, requires districts to implement performance evaluation systems that assess teachers and principals' professional skills, as well as incorporate the measures of student growth. ISBE's Performance Evaluation Advisory Council recommends the Charlotte Danielson framework for teaching as a model to use for the evaluations, as it aligns with the evaluation requirements by ISBE. The framework is research-based and incorporates evidence such as lesson plans and student work to support various ratings considering cultural and development issues that can affect teaching. And administrators and teachers in Rockford Public Schools actually have not been trained on this in the past 3 years. So we would like to make sure that all new administrators, as well as teacher leaders, participate in, understand, and are able to implement and observe the components of the Danielson framework for teaching. We plan to work with the learning team and the REA to make sure we have adequate representation from the administration as well as teacher leaders. So the training will include up to 50 people. A brief overview of the 3-day training. We'll have an introduction to the framework of teaching, observation skills, and then also we'll focus on learning-focused conversations.
Thank you. Any other questions, Ms. Powers?
So this is scheduled to take place in July, and I guess the way I talked about it at the last Ed committee when they were proposing, it was much more expensive than this one, but a lot of folks are vacation or not available or what have you, and I think that this is really important training. So what is your plan? I mean, if you've got your first round draft of who you think needs to attend this and you aren't able to get them, so you may go to second round or what have you, but is there some mechanism to circle back to get your first round folks of those that you really want to have this training? Is there a plan for how to get them caught up?
Absolutely. So I spoke with the Danielson Group. After this 3-day training, we will assess the training and whether or not we're able to move forward with, the people who attended the training being able to train other people within the district, or whether or not we actually need to invite them back for a train the trainer type of module so that we can move forward to train others who are not able to attend.
That'd be great. Thank you. And if you could keep track of that, because I really would like to know if we got 80% of who we really want with the first round, that's fantastic.
Absolutely.
But I think that's an important metric to know when we're having to dip into second and third choice.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of the Danielson Evaluating Training Program.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay, I'll now take a motion for the approval of the permanent operating transfer.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. Any questions? Ms. McCullough.
I had this pulled because I've already shared with board members, both at the retreat and at individual meetings with everyone who's made themselves available, where the revenue would be for the facilities that has taken us from the 211 that was voted on in 2012 to the 250 that we're projecting to spend. And what I had said, part of that money, we've already had an operating fund, transfer to operating fund of $30 million, and that I would, the committee would come to the board to ask for the additional $20 million to be transferred. I didn't want it to be lost. I want everybody to be aware that it is on the agenda. And I do want to ascertain with Ms. Holdley that the correct place for that operating fund transfer is under other consent, because I did misspeak at the previous meeting when I said I thought it would be under new business and have 2 readings. So it goes there because, if you could just speak to that.
This is traditionally where it's always went as a financial transaction, a movement between accounts. So that's
Okay.
the only reason.
Okay, so I bring that to light just to the attention of the board members that it was my misrepresentation, and that is indeed what this money, this transfer is for.
Any other questions? Mr. Rollins.
Could I just ask Mr. Lewis to speak to where we're at with the reserves after this transfer and in terms of our our reserve policy as well?
My numbers forecasting right now, we'll probably have about 17 million left. 17 million ahead of the 25% threshold after this operating transfer.
Thank you. I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of the permanent operating transfer.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
No.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses and 1 no.
I'll now take a motion for the approval of the resolution and notice of public hearing on the tentative budget for 2014-2015. Mr. Connor?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. Questions or discussion? Mr. Rollins.
So this is the resolution for our tentative budget. I just wanted to confirm with Mr. Lewis. It's my understanding that the tentative budget shows a balanced operating budget, and also that the revenue assumptions do not include any taking a CPI increase in our tax levy for local property taxes for next year. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I'll offer a friendly amendment. It's a balanced budget, but I want to be very forthright that one of the things that we discussed during the budget presentation was purchasing a new time and attendance system, and we're forecasting that that's going to cost us about $1 million, and we want to pledge $1 million in reserves for that.
Right. So I think we all understood that there are some capital items that we would be asked to spend out of our reserves, but from an operating standpoint, it's a balanced operating budget.
Absolutely.
Ms. McCullough.
And I'm just, why hasn't that been presented to the board prior to putting out for the hearing?
I don't understand your question, Ms. McCullough.
Because the initial budget that was brought to our attention was a deficit budget, and I know that the administration went back and made some changes, yet as a board member, I haven't seen those changes. And so I would like to have been in that loop. I don't know about other board members before we say we're going to go out to the public with it. So is it complete? I mean, are we done? We have the budget in hand, really ready to move forward, and so when will the board see that?
It's actually in your packet right now.
Okay, where is it in our packet?
I'm sorry?
Where is it in our packet? And how did I miss it? It's just, you mean it's on board docs?
Yes.
Okay. When Mr. Rollins asked you about the levy, and you're saying we're staying flat on the levy?
Correct. The original budget had CPI in it. For next year, we've taken CPI out of the budget and made the necessary adjustments to present a balanced budget to the board and the community.
So when you did that, I did have a question from a constituent about the tax caps and the fact that we are reaching our levels, and can you just talk a little bit about the specific question which I received, which is about the transportation fund? But can you talk about the tax caps in general and that fund in particular?
Yes, we are definitely hitting our tax caps. It's just a result of course, our falling EAV, which is continuing to erode. EAV actually fell more this year than we had anticipated. And it's just, the rate has to go up to generate the same amount of money because the aggregate value of property, of course, is falling. So when we're talking about transportation, here are our options. What we're entitled to, push some of the money into the transportation fund or cut even more. And of course, we don't want to find ourselves in a position where we've cut our revenues so badly that we hurt ourselves long run, because as you could appreciate, when we give away CPI, it's gone forever. There is no getting those dollars back. Of course, we did that with the 58 cent, and with the budget that's being presented to you this evening, this will be a third consecutive year that we've foregone CPI. So, I hope I answered your question.
Okay. Ms. Jackson?
I do have a question. So this budget was not balanced. So you can, walk me through how we got to a balanced budget.
The administration, well, we basically took I would say a scalpel and surgically made some reductions in various lines throughout the budget. We made some reductions in pretty much everybody's budget that's sitting to my right. That's how we got to a balanced budget.
But the administration is asking the board to approve a spend of $1 million from reserves?
Correct. For the time and attendance system, under the Affordable Care Act, we have to compute hours for all employees on a quarterly basis. And any employee who is entitled, who has worked on average 30 hours, we have to offer that employee health insurance. We have a manual system right now that just doesn't cut it. We should have done this upgrade a long time ago, because the system that we currently have has been in place since 2002. So we want to protect ourselves with the right software to accurately compute employee hours.
Okay. I'll have the coordinator call the roll then on the approval of the resolution and notice of public hearing on the tentative budget for next year.
Ms. Jackson?
No.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses and 1 no.
We are now at the closed session consent agenda items, including the following: 10-month administrative dean position, notice of dismissal and non-renewal of educational support personnel reduction in force, appointment of a 10-month assistant principal, appointment of another 10-month assistant principal, appointment of another 10-month assistant principal, appointment of a 12-month director of secondary curriculum and instruction, appointment of a 12-month director of teacher effectiveness, the HR organizational report and addendum, and the following closed session consent items: student discipline, in which listed students are prohibited from being on school grounds and school-sponsored activities without the prior written permission of the principal, and suspensions are affirmed. The following students are expelled for the remainder of this school year and the entire 2014-2015 school year: LBL 5, AJM 6, TDT 14, JLW 20, RRD 23, BTG 24, DEH 31, JMA 32, FS 33, GOE 34, LMJ 35, TDA 37, TC 38, JP 39, JMW 40, and OH 41. The 10-day suspension is upheld for the following students and are held in abeyance contingent upon a conditional probationary agreement for the following students, KMG 17 and PEB 44. And the following students are expelled for the remainder of this year and the entire 2014-15 school year, and the recommended expulsion for the first semester of the 2015-2016 school year are held in abeyance contingent upon a conditional probationary agreement. That's students KEW 29 and JBW 36. And the following students are expelled for the remainder of the 2013-14 school year, and recommendation expulsions for the 2014-15 school year are held in abeyance contingent upon a conditional probationary agreement for students GDB 21, EJS 27, ANP 28, NJG 30, and ZJB 43. Bless you. And the following student is expelled for the remainder of this school year, and the recommended expulsions for the first semester of the 2014-15 school year is held in abeyance contingent upon a CPA, VTA 25. The following students are expelled for the remainder of this year and the first semester of next year, HMP 18 and CDB 26. And the recommended expulsion is held in abeyance contingent upon a CPA for student DDS 19. And the following students have been granted a conditional probationary agreement: DMD 1, BMD 2, JSF 3, TTG 4, JON 7, KPB 8, FXR 9, JMS 10, DS 11, JS 12, MS 13, DAT 15, SW 16, MMG 42, ILJ 45. Is there a motion and a second to approve the closed session consent items?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor, second by Ms. McCullough. Are there any items that board members would like to have pulled for separate consideration? Ms. Jackson.
11, A through H, they can go as a group, and then 12, and go as a group.
Okay. Thank you. Any others? If not, I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of the closed session items not pulled.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCullough?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers? Ms. Jackson? Mrs. Powers? Closed session consent items not pulled.
No.
The motion passes with 6 yeses and 1 no.
And I'll take a motion and a second for the items that were pulled, which are items under 11 and 12.
So moved.
Connor?
Second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. There is no discussion. I'll have the coordinator call the roll.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCullough?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
No.
Ms. Jackson?
No.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
The motion passes with 5 yeses and 2 nos.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report from Dr. Jarrett.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. First of all, I'd like to highlight the work of our middle school team and Mr. Hickman, and also wanted to highlight Dr. Harner, who attended all 4 of the community meetings as a board champion. That was exemplary work, and that was greatly appreciated. I was really impressed to see that we had well over 100 community members attend those 4 meetings. It's an important topic, and we appreciated that community conversation. Also wanted to highlight the team's hard work on the budget process. I think we're providing a continually improving educational product. Our property value is worth what it was in 2001, and we are collecting similar dollars locally to what we collected in 2007. So I think we are really working hard to provide value for the taxpayers, and I think the board is to be commended for their continued stance on trying to be cognizant of the impact that lowering property value or decreasing property value has on the rate, and so I think that's been an excellent stance. Finally, I want to compliment our team, our communications team, the facilities task force, and those board champions that have served on that group, Mrs. McCulloch and Ms. Harner, Dr. Harner, along with the board members. We're, I think, taking very strong steps to meet people where they are in the community. We've had hundreds of community members attend meetings thus far. And one of the things I'm really proud of with our communications team is within 48 hours, we have lived up to our commitment that those comments are posted on our website. So I'd encourage everyone who's not had the opportunity to attend a meeting yet, you can see Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday and Friday's comments from last week are already posted. We also made a promise that on a weekly basis we would update the frequently asked questions. We would cull through those community comments, and I think our communications team and our facilities team has done an excellent job reviewing that. We now have about 12 additional frequently asked questions that have been updated. We are really trying to be responsive and transparent with our process. Look forward to a number of other meetings. We have 3 this week. There's one that's occurring this evening that's sponsored by our Community Input Committee. And Mr. Dotson from our team is attending that. We will have a meeting tomorrow night and also Wednesday night in the evening, so we're really targeting that. And there's an additional evening meeting the following week. So there are a total of 4 evening meetings on different nights of the week to encourage folks that are unable to attend the sessions. But I'm proud to report that the meetings have been extremely well attended, and we've seen a nice combination of staff, families, and even some students have attended the meetings as well at our elementary sites. So overall, a lot of hard work by a lot of people, and we're really excited to continue to listen to what the community has to say, learning a lot from those meetings. So thank you for those of you that have attended multiple meetings, and I know many of you have. We appreciate that commitment.
Education Committee met on May 5th. We had multiple items on our agenda which will be covered tonight under new business. SMART with Mr. Hickman, the middle school science textbooks, the middle school and high school health textbooks, and the social studies textbooks. All those will be brought forward to the board as part of new business. We also had an update on the middle school assessment that is ongoing and where we're moving forward with that. And the last item on our agenda was the park rollout, and I asked Mr. Weisman just to give the board a little bit of an update on that.
Definitely, this has been an exciting, event-filled couple of months as we have about 20 schools that are participating in the field test. They were chosen by the state of Illinois, and about 75 teachers that are working through that. We're currently in the second phase of the field testing. We've got 2 weeks of testing that we're in the middle of right now. About 3/4 of the field testing is being done online, and the rest of it is traditional paper pencil. Next year, districts will be able to choose whether they take the actual park test, which will replace ISAT, and the state still hasn't told us if it's going to replace PSAE or if kids are going to take PSAE and park next year. But the idea is that we will transition into a Common Core state high-stakes testing model, and park will be eventually the replacement for ISAT and PSAE. There are a handful of hurdles that we've gone through along the way. A lot of them have to do with technology. That's part of the reason why why Pearson and Park are doing a field test, is to find all the technology glitches so that they can be better prepared next year. We did spend, I don't remember the amount of money right offhand actually right now. We did spend some funds on purchasing supplementary supplies to be able to use the iPads for the park testing to see how that went. It didn't go great with the park app with our iPads. So we are continually working through and trying to get feedback. We did a working session before the park field test started with local districts to figure out what they were doing and to try to find some areas where we could partner on ideas. We have another session with them planned after the field testing is done, as well as a listening session for principals and teachers who participated in it. We did put together a handful of professional development for the teachers participating, including some training videos that they were able to watch and be paid for. So definitely a learning experience. We do have some concerns with being able to utilize the technology in the future, just with budgetary constraints, but if that does continue to hit us for the next year, the state does allow us to use paper pencil testing next year, which might be a viable option.
And so you did say to the committee that the paper pencil option, we're going to let everybody else spend their money on all the apps and the electronics, and hopefully they'll get the bugs worked out. So it's not such a bad thing that we couldn't afford to do that first year during that rollout piece.
Right, there are some benefits to not utilizing the technology. It's letting everybody else work through another year of bugs while we kind of sit on the sidelines and watch.
Mr. Connor has a question.
Mr. Weisman, if I remember correctly, there were issues technically, but I wondered if the state of Illinois is still committed to the park standards, and are there any potential impact to the rollout of the park test due to the technology problems?
Great question. So really the 2 or 3 big issues that we've encountered with the rollout, and this is really the important question of the field tests. Number 1 is students' ability to be familiar with the test and the new technology that the test offers. It's different than a paper pencil test, so training with students is a big deal. We've had a lot of hurdles with different software pieces being updated or needing to be updated or not needing to be updated. For example, when the park application came out, it required, one of the dependencies was a specific version of Java. And when Oracle updated their Java, parks said, don't update your Java. But sometimes those updates happen automatically, and park had to issue another version of their test. A third issue that hasn't hit us as much as it's hit other states, but it is a pattern that park has acknowledged and trying to work through, is the internet reliability of the providers. So Pearson is our provider, and there was a window where Pearson's internet providers went down and our schools weren't able to access the online testing at that point. So park is specifically addressing that, and they've acknowledged that as one of the big issues. It doesn't seem at this point like any of these issues are things that the state or park feels is going to hinder the rollout of the field test. They always put in the clause to say paper pencil is definitely an option next year, and if it needs to be an option moving forward, we could add additional years to that.
Thank you.
And I'll just, and thank you. I didn't mean for that to go on so long, but I think people need to start hearing about the fact that we're changing our testing
Definitely.
and just what's happening with that. Our next meeting is June 2nd in this room. On our agenda are reports about the empowerment zones, the high school academies, the school improvement planning process, and virtual learning. We will be looking at our committee structure and having a discussion as a board about the reconstitution of those committees, and we will let the public know when that will occur. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rollins, you can proceed with the Operations Committee report.
Thank you. The Operations Committee met here on May 6th at 5:30 p.m. We had another presentation of the K-12 Insight Survey update, which the board had the first reading on at the last board meeting. That was passed forward from the Operations Committee on a 4-3 recommendation, although I don't see it on the agenda tonight. We had a presentation from Mr. Contreras about a software package for evaluation, personnel evaluation. That actually failed at the committee level on a 3-4 vote, but I think it is on our agenda tonight under new business, as an action item. And then we had a facilities master plan, capital and life safety projects update from Mr. Schmidt, basically just giving us an overview of where we're at. And I don't know, is there anything in particular, Mr. Schmidt, you'd like to highlight for that, where we're at? We've got the start of the summer construction season coming up, and I don't know, maybe you can just give a little bit of an overview of what's coming up.
For next summer, we're continuing. We have the field house at Guilford with weight room that's in process right now. We will be starting at the east with the cafeteria expansion, the ADA accommodations, a multi-purpose room, and the field house. office relocation. That will start along with the window updates, removal and replacement and new blinds for Auburn and Guilford, which will start along with the univents for each of the classrooms at Auburn and Guilford. Those will start this summer. We have boiler replacements and HVAC controls at Johnson, Conkle, and Lathrop, McIntosh, and Froberg. For those boiler replacements will start. We have the library renovations that will start at Auburn, East, and Guilford. We'll do that just like we did with Jefferson last year. We'll do those. Currently, we have out on the street for the bid that the board hasn't awarded yet is for the renovations to the gymnasium at Jefferson, a new secure entrance at Jefferson, along with the auditoriums at East, Guilford, and Jefferson. Those are still out on the street. That we should get those bids back next week. So it's going to be a very busy summer this year.
Okay, thanks. And then the last item we covered was the school activity fund status report. Each year, each of our schools has an activity fund. Each year, the auditors select a few of those schools to audit. They generally make a few recommendations on ways to improve internal controls. We discussed those. There weren't any major findings, though. The next meeting of the Operations Committee will be here on June 3rd at 5:30 p.m. Thanks.
Thank you. We are now on to action items, and our first item tonight is the $35,000 project Lead the Way grant acceptance for East High School. This was presented by Dr. Wolf. Is there a motion and a second to approve this project?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor. Anybody want to second it? Ms. Powers, any questions or discussion?
Yes,
Ms. Jackson.
again, what is this? Update, please.
This was presented last month, right, or last meeting?
We applied for and received two $35,000 grant awards. They are respectively A and B here, to help us pay for the expenses of the agreements that the board has previously approved for enacting Project Lead the Way engineering coursework as part of the career academies.
Any other questions? I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of the East High grant for Project Lead the Way.
Mrs. McCulloch?
That was a yes from out in the hall. Okay.
I know she was gone. Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
I'll now take a motion and a second for the Guilford High School Project Lead the Way grant acceptance.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor,
Second.
second by Dr. Harner. Any questions, discussion? None, I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of the Guilford High Project Lead the Way grant.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Our next action item is the Student Code of Conduct for 2014-15. This was presented by Ms. Carter last board meeting. Is there a motion and a second to approve the Student Code of Conduct for next year?
So moved.
Moved by Ms.
Second.
McCulloch, second by Dr. Harner. Questions or discussion? Ms. Jackson?
Yes. The administration speak to, I guess, an overview of the major changes to the Code of Conduct, what's different from last year?
Good evening. You want me to follow up from last meeting?
Just the major changes, what's different? One of the things that I know that I had concerns about was the requiring of a student's, password to their social media account, i.e. Facebook. I actually asked that that be removed, but I see that it's still in here, so that won't be coming out, correct?
I think legal counsel addressed that last year, that that's not an option for us. That's new legislation.
It's not an option to
We're
require
presenting,
someone's password?
we're going to
I'm sorry,
present a
legal
code.
counsel.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
You can remove it. What the statute has changed so that it specifically states that administration could ask for that, and a lot of that deals with some of the reason for the legislation change was to address issues related to school safety and some of the incidents that have happened at other schools.
So what are some of the overall, what's changed?
Basically, the overall changes, Ms. Jackson, was the chart in the matrix. Remember, we added a different appeal chart for easy reading, and we also added the elementary zero tolerance chart for case 1 and case 2 statuses. And then we agreed to add the color sections. Everything else was due to, like I said, state statute changes, such as the look-alike drugs. We added that information as well.
Any other questions for Ms. Carter? If not, I'll have the coordinator call the roll.
You know, actually, I don't know if it's a question or comment, but there was something made tonight, a comment by someone from the audience, and I have the same concern. We talk about the zero tolerance policies. Those are just still there, and we talk about the school to prison pipeline. You know, for a lot of our students, this is where it starts for them. When they get introduced to the judicial system, it's in our schools. So, I mean, there's been a mandate from the president's office to look at this. I guess as a district, what are we doing to support that? I mean, because this code hasn't changed much. It just tends to be more punitive over the years. And I tend to think that if expulsions worked, we wouldn't continue to have the cases that we have. Every 2 weeks, we're expelling kids out of school. And expulsions may be down, but that's due to the number of CPAs. If we're not expelling them, we're placing them on CPAs. So I guess what are we going to do so that we don't see this, that we don't continue to expel kids?
Dr. Jarrett,
Are you asking me that question, or are you asking your
Yes, or the
board?
administration, or whoever wants.
One thing I would like to say is that it's not only, if you look at virtually all major discipline categories, the impact of our discipline code has shown significant reductions in everything from tardies to expulsions to other more significant Tier 3 offenses. I think we're seeing some real significant progress and improvement in a number of our schools, and I expect that to continue to improve moving forward. And I think adhering to that code consistently and using more on a much more regular basis in-school suspension has certainly contributed to that, along with another number of other factors. So I commend Ms. Hyde-Carter and the team and the community for putting together what I think is a strong code that has enhanced and improved building climate.
And it's a code that introduces our students to the judicial system. They get caught up in this juvenile system and other things like that. I mean, we just heard about the tardies. We're not going to restart the counter for them. And we know that's a major issue. We have kids being put out of school for really minor offenses.
I could just echo Mr. Jarrett's sentiments. The code is developed in collaboration and support with building level teachers and administrators. Mrs. Hyde-Carter has done a phenomenal job of getting feedback and input at 16 parent meetings, community meetings throughout the year. She's had 5 meetings with professional staff. We've compared our code to districts that are similar to us, such as Springfield, Aurora, Elgin, Peoria, Freeport, Belvedere, Irving, Texas. We have internal data. At our last presentation and at our Ed committee, she presented 8 data points, all of them showing near 40% reductions in major offenses, including arrests. In fact, our arrest numbers are the lowest they've been in 10 years by a very significant number, and that was presented at Ed committee. The Ed committee voted on this code unanimously to support it. And in fact, they gave Mrs. Hyde-Carter an ovation, which I think she deserves. So I'd like to present this to the board as a total package of higher expectations for students. We're in year 3 of higher expectations for students. and we've seen some dramatic results. I want to compliment Mrs. Hawkins back there. Her school has witnessed some really tremendous results, fewer kids being suspended, higher attendance rates, and those things are going to result in higher achievement for students, and that's why we're here.
Now, I'm sorry, just not finished yet. I don't think anyone heard me question Mrs. Hyde-Carter's, what she's done for this code. I've raised concerns, and one of them is the school-to-prison pipeline. We see that. The majority of students who receive consequences from this code of conduct are black males. We see that. And so those are the questions that I'm posing to this administration. What are we going to do about this? What in this code is going to address that issue or address some of those issues that we see?
Ms. McCullough.
I just wanted to comment on, I know our expulsion numbers are down, and I did hear the comment that that's because our CPA numbers have taken the place of the expulsions, but I thought part of what this administration and the board wanted to see was an opportunity to keep our students in school instead of expelling them and putting them into, for example, alternative placements such as regional. And so the CPA, the conditional probation agreement, has allowed us to do that and give those students who otherwise would have been expelled quite often an opportunity to stay in school and to continue on with their education. So to kind of undermine the fact that we're able to do that and say, well, that's the only reason expulsions are down. I'm glad expulsions are down, and if the CPAs, and I was one of the one that was somewhat resistive to CPAs when they came about, but they seem to be working. We get numbers back on how students have been able to continue on without repeat occurrences of disciplinary infractions. Not everyone, but if it's helping us keep students in school and learning, then that has been a positive effect. So if our CPAs are up, but they're working to keep our kids in school and having less expulsions, I think that's a good a good result.
And I don't think you heard me say that the only reason expulsions are down are due to CPAs. I said that the expulsions may be down. That's because we're placing many of our kids on CPAs, Jude. That's not just the whole answer to this, Board Member McCullough. And when I make comments or statements, I'm making them based on what I see and the people that I represent.
Thank you. Ms. Powers?
Just for the record to clarify, we did not give Ms. Hyde-Carter an ovation. Let's just be factual here. And I do appreciate the position that she has been in, because I feel that she has been in the middle of parents and community and administration. Parents and community provided input. We clearly said restart the counter, and it was vetoed by administration. That is a fact. So while I do applaud her efforts, because she has been in the middle of hearing loud and clear in 16 different meetings what community and parents and board members were there and what it is we want. And yet the outcome and what I see on paper is not reflected in what was voiced at those meetings. So I do applaud the fact that you're able to come to work every day when you are put in the middle of that kind of a situation. Secondly, I think that what I, as a board member, am concerned about is that I don't want to nitpick whether there has been improvements and what that is based on. I agree that there is still room for improvement. I'm not satisfied yet that as a strategy, we do have a board priority to retain and recruit minority professionals, and I guess I would say that I would like to retain our minority men in this district to the road of graduation. That's what we are about, and we've made progress. I guess I'm willing to concede that. It's not to my satisfaction, and I don't hear that there is a strategy in place to address that. And when you hear from the community that we think keeping kids in school and resetting the counter is one way to do that, and it gets vetoed, good luck getting community input on your $50,000, Mr. Weisman, for the strategic plan. Because when you invite people to come and speak and you think that you're being heard, but you're not, people are going to stop showing up.
Mr. Rollins.
People are passionate about these issues, and they should be passionate about these issues. These are difficult topics, and we all want to try to save every student, but what I do want to point out is that we have 28,000 students in the system, and the parents of the students who are not having the infractions are not typically the ones who go to these meetings. We have to also be concerned about the other 27,500 students who are not committing infractions. And while I hear about minor infractions, we have to be worried about the quality of the education that all students get. If a student is tardy, they walk into class late, that's a disruption. And if you've got 25 students in that class, and that's a 5-minute disruption, you know, everybody stops, everybody looks at the door, student walks in, goes to their desk, sits down. Let's say it's only a 5-minute disruption, and you've got 25 students in that class. That's 125 instructional minutes that that teacher just lost, and that our system just lost. And if you add up the number of tardies in this district, which I'm sure Ms. Schnell would be happy to do for you, and multiply that by 5 minutes, I wonder how many minutes of instructional time we lose in this district just because of tardies. And we can call it a minor offense, we can minimize it, but at the end of the day, we're all worried about student achievement in this district. We say we are anyway. If you want student achievement, we have to have teachers who are on task and students who are on task in the classroom. That's how you're going to get student achievement. The individual rights that we talk about, the individual concerns that we are talking about are important concerns. But the concerns of the other parents and the students who are there to be educated, they are equally important concerns. And sometimes I worry that we don't hear from those people, and that sometimes it seems like the administration is the only people who are out to protect those concerns. And so I will support the administration on this.
The coordinator call the roll then on the approval of the Student Code of Conduct for 2014-2015.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
No.
Ms. Jackson?
No.
Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
The motion passes with 5 yeses and 2 nos.
Our final action item tonight is the True North Logic Software Agreement. Mr. Contreras presented this. Are there any questions? Or I need a motion first to approve the True North Software Agreement.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Connor.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rollins. Now, are there any questions or discussion on the True North Logic Software Agreement? Mr. Connor.
I will say I applaud the move towards professionalization and automation where it makes sense for HR. So I think this is a good idea, and I will support it. I will say, and Mr. Rollins pointed out, that the Ops Committee did turn this down. And I will say out loud that it does bother me that Ops turned it down, but I think there was a number of reasons for that, but I do want to at least say out loud that I think that the explanations on some of these things need to be a little bit more crisp, and I will say that it's not easy to take these processes and automate them and make them more structured. But in spite of some of those issues, I will support it.
Ms. Powers.
Could Mr. Rollins or Mr. Contreras, whoever, give what the reasons were that Ops Committee did not support it?
It's hard for me to say because I was actually surprised when the vote came out. I'm guessing here, and my guess is that people thought that, were of the opinion that it was just too much money for what it's doing, and that you could do the same thing with using paper and pencil, is what it boils down to. I'll say, I've asked around. I think that I've found that most large organizations are using a software program like this to do it, and that the price for that program is comparable to what we're paying. That's the best I can do for you. And maybe Mr. Connor can have another insight.
I will say this, and it's an excellent question. I did follow up with a couple of the members that voted no. One thing is that because the usage of this software will increase over time, there was a feeling that perhaps it could have been done smaller up front. I think it was the administration's decision to go and do the whole thing up front, which I understand, but if you want to know why some people voted against it, I do believe that was part of the reasoning. I don't want to speak for everybody on that, but I did ask about that. I think the other thing is that anytime you spend money on software, and especially it's right around a little bit over $100,000 in total, I mean, that's a lot of money. And I think in a day when we're asking people to be very careful with money, I certainly understand that. The one thing I'll say is what I said at Ops Committee is, unfortunately, we are spending a lot of money today on manual process. And that, I think, is one of the key reasons why I am for this is that, and I've done this for a living for a long time, is when you automate processes that are very manual, you are spending staff time on those very things, and there are things you can't do. We don't have a central way of tracking nor following up. So, but I think those are hard to see. I'll be real honest. I've done this for a long time, and I think that is hard to see. And so the individuals I talked to had those hesitations, and those were the basic reasons that I saw.
Mrs. Powers?
So my follow-up question is the 98,000 part of the budget, and is the 26,000 annually then part of the budget as well?
Yes, both are.
Mr. Rollins?
I just had some technical questions that are probably more for Mr. Weisman. So this is a proprietary software package, and the evaluation, since this has to do with employee evaluations, we're going to want to make sure we have access to this long term. So, you know, are we going to host this information ourselves someplace on our system? Is it all going to be hosted someplace else? Really, my question is, are we sure that we're always going to have access to it no matter what happens to this company?
Yep. So great question. When PDS went through the IT assessment, one of the things that they really suggested we move more towards is software as a service, hosting software services in the cloud to get away from some of that manual work that we have to utilize to host things ourselves. So this is not going to be hosted internally. That's becoming best practice for software applications. And the Human Resources Department acknowledged that and really looked for an option that would support IT best practices in this case. So the terms and conditions allow us to retrieve the data at any time that we need to. The terms and conditions offer backup services that are provided as part of the contract. Theoretically, worst case scenario, any type of cloud hosted service could go down. But the chance of them going down over the chance of us going down is we're probably better throwing our cards at them. That's what this is, kind of a best practice now, becoming a best practice.
Thanks.
Okay. I comment that I'm very familiar with systems like this. It's a very positive move in the right direction to improve efficiency and accuracy, so I strongly support this. I'll have the coordinator call the roll on the approval of the True North Logic software agreement then.
Mrs. Powers?
Yeah, sure.
Ms. Jackson? No. Mr. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
The motion passes with 6 yeses and 1 no.
Thank you. We are now on the new and other business, and first item, administration has asked the board to suspend the rules to consider this item, board policy 8.20, community relations, community use of school facilities. Attorney Hoadley. Do we need a motion first? Okay. To approve the suspension?
Oh, yes.
I think we need a motion first to suspend the rules.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. McCullough. Is there a second?
Second.
Second? I need to ask for questions? No, okay, all right. No debate on that one, okay. So do we call a roll on that? Okay, we'll have a roll call on the suspension of the rules.
Ms. Jackson?
No.
Mr. Rollins?
No.
Mr. Scrivano?
Yes.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Yes.
Dr. Harner?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mrs. Powers?
No.
The mo,
It fails.
it fails?
It need a
Oh,
supermajority.
the motion fails,
Would require a supermajority.
supermajority.
Okay. Okay. So we'll have this be a first reading then, okay? And Attorney Holdley will present that.
This is a policy that has already been amended. The only change now that is being presented is the change in the effective date. This is the facilities use policy, and some of the things that we're still trying to unwind are some of the agreements that we have with the Park District, longstanding agreements, and trying to reach a comprehensive intergovernmental agreement to address all of the facilities use. Some of the things that I don't know that all the board members are aware or not, but different facilities were placed on Park District lands that were transferred, and there are some agreements that say that they get to use the facilities or the land free of charge as a result of that transfer. So it's, for example, Barber is one of them. So in any event, we are working with the Park District to reach a comprehensive intergovernmental agreement. And this is the Park District's busiest time, so they had asked for leeway in implementation of the policy from July 1 of this current year to January of 2015.
Mr. Rollins.
Well, I was a little surprised to see this. The genesis of this, is my understanding, Mr. Connor and I are on a board task force to talk to the Park District about doing some sort of a comprehensive intergovernmental agreement with the Park District. And what we found is what Mrs. Hoadley said, is that we were not aware of the breadth and scope of the arrangements, the current existing arrangements with the Park District. And so at a meeting that Mr. Connor and I attended a week or two ago, we were asked whether we would object to putting on hold, or at least giving the Park District and the school district a 6-month extension to try to work through those agreements to make them fit within the rubric of this policy. And I expressed that I would certainly be willing to do that. I was never part of a conversation that said that this policy would not take effect until January 1st. And so I'm perfectly willing to say we ought to, in light of this body of existing contracts with the Park District, we ought to grant both parties a 6-month extension to work through those existing contracts. Somebody's going to have to explain to me why they think that requires that this policy not go into effect until January 1st.
There was originally in the proposed policy that was then amended by the board, there was originally a provision for a waiver of the policy for either groups or specific reasons, but that was taken out specifically by the board so that there would not be any waivers granted. The only provision then is if we can show that there is in-kind contributions. So it's either you suspend it for all or for none, was essentially how then the policy has been drafted.
Just as a practical matter, we're looking to make sure we have an accurate accounting of the agreements, of all agreements, and specifically the complexity of the Park District, not feel like it was realistic to do that in 2 months. So we wanted to ask the board for additional time to take that into account, and that was the request.
Any other questions? Ms. McCulloch.
I'm done.
And just for fair, Ms. Holdley, did we start looking for all these last November? Was that when we hired someone to start? So it's not just really been 2 months, that's just the depth of the agreements that we know of, don't know of, and are still finding out about.
That would be correct. We really did start on the process of trying to work something out with the Park District and actually starting the process of getting information, exchanging information, because a lot of the agreements go back 30, 40 years or so from different intergovernmental agreements. And so it was really, we started in November gathering all of the information.
And I don't mean, this is not a tit for tat, it's just that I'm really bothered by the fact that we've worked, at least our legal department has worked so much up to this point in time, and we still don't have, we still aren't to a point where we're comfortable with where we're at. So I'm going to give everybody the benefit of the doubt and hope that they find out, unleash all the other skeletons we have out there. Thanks.
Yeah, why shouldn't this apply?
Mr. Rollins, did you still have a question?
Oh, sorry, no.
All right. Ms.
I do.
Jackson?
And I expressed this concern. It was not just the Park District that was impacted by the change in this policy. There were actually other organizations. One of them has had to cancel their track meet that they were going to have at Auburn High School in a couple of weeks. So if this goes through, it's not going to be done just solely for the Park District. There's another team that doesn't know if they can practice anymore because we're changing the fee. So it's not just the Park District. So if this goes, it will be, I would think, for everyone, because, and that's what I expressed.
Currently, the way the policy and the underlying administrative procedure have been written is that there is a possibility to waive certain fees for different entities. So I think the fee structure has changed regardless of any change to the policy, and that would be part of what administration would do anyways. So whether or not they grant a particular waiver to an entity, I can't say that they would necessarily grant waivers to various entities or not, but that's what the existing process has been.
Ms. McCullough?
Mr. Rollins, I would just ask you, because you and Mr. Connor are champions for the board working with the Park District, so do you have another expectation or recommendation as to a timeline or a different way to do this besides a policy change, since that was not what you expected to come out of your conversation?
I'm a little surprised that the board itself cannot grant a waiver to a policy, to a board policy.
That's how we drafted the language originally, to allow the board to grant waivers to the board policy itself. So it would be brought to the board as a waiver, but then that language was taken out. So I guess you could still say as a board you'd waive the policy. It's just inconsistent with what you had wanted done with the policy.
So is the answer that we can waive the policy?
You are the governing entity, of course you can. It's just inconsistent with what you wanted done with the policy.
Okay, well, that would have been my expectation, I guess, is that I thought that we would be asked to waive the policy as to the existing contracts with the Park District for 6 months while we work out all of those existing arrangements.
Okay. Ms. Powers?
And I'm okay with it as a startup waiver. I supported removing the waiver language because I don't like it to be there on a permanent, ongoing basis. I get that as we begin this process and implementing this policy, that we're encountering more issues than what we thought, so I'm okay. I would be okay with providing a waiver just as a startup, but on an ongoing basis, I don't support a waiver.
Okay. Mr. Connor?
So because I guess I'm always in the position of playing the slow one in the crowd. So what are you saying we should do? I guess I've said it before, I'll say it again. God, I love lawyers. I know all the things in the world I can't do. So why don't I get some advice on what we can do to make this work? Are you saying we need to change the policy? Or are you saying, as it stands now, we have to do something to make this work?
I don't think the policy provided a mechanism for administration to come and ask for you to waive any policy provision. If you choose to take that action without administration's recommendation, because there isn't, that language was taken out. So there isn't a mechanism for administration to seek a waiver of the policy. That's something that you would choose to do.
And could we do that this evening or not?
That would be the first reading, so to speak, 'cause since it's on the agenda as a policy change, then next time we would, I guess, present it as a board action to waive.
So, what was our original date? Was
July 1, and we were looking for January 1st to,
Right.
because that was the only option we felt we had.
So, a reasonable person would say if this is first reading, at the second reading, we could then pass a waiver as the board, and then that would essentially, presuming the board passes it, then that would allow us to have what Mrs. Powers said, which is a temporary waiver, and then give us a new date for finishing this. Do I understand that correctly?
That would be correct.
Okay.
All right.
I can sleep well.
Good. All right, so this will then come up for a second reading and vote at our next board meeting. Now we'll move on to Dr. Wolf. IMEA grant acceptance, $707,000.
I'm really disappointed we did not get that last dime, but I am really glad that we had 97.2% of our request, which will fund 48 security and safety projects in our schools that will keep staff and students safer in the built environment. Parents and grandparents will notice it when they come to our schools, and these grants will get it done by the end of April 2015.
As the board champion for school safety, I am thrilled. Okay. Any other discussion? This will come up for a vote then on May 27th. And our final item tonight is the Smart Learning System. Mr. Hickman.
Good evening. I'm bringing Smart Learning Systems before you. I want to apologize to our Ed Committee members. This will be the third time you've heard this presentation, so we'll expedite this. We bring this forward with a sound recommendation from the Education Committee. We had 5 yeses and 1 abstention. And I'll be presenting with Anke Bradley. We had a staff member present with us at that Education Committee. That staff member was unable to be here this evening, but the principal, Janice Hawkins, will be here in Dr. Wallace's place. And so what I want to do is just speak real plainly to you, because I know it's the end of the night and you probably don't want me to drag this out. What we have is we've identified, or the board's identified, 4 critical areas for Dr. Jarrett and the administrative team to focus on: literacy, numeracy, attainment, college and career readiness. And that within itself seems pretty simple in trying to align a school to those objectives. But the reality is that single school represents teams of people leading school improvement. Somebody leading the school improvement team, the problem-solving team, grade level teams, professional learning teams. And so we have lots of people engaging in school improvement. And so a one schoolhouse may be simple enough, but when we have 47 schools with all those people leading improvement, we really struggle to align those improvement efforts. And I think this is a great diagram that probably depicts where we're at currently, that we have a lot of people trying to get better, but we don't have the systems in place for them to lead in an effective way and in an aligned way. And so what we've done is we have selected a solution design process which aligns perfectly and actually was borrowed from, or I should say our school improvement process was borrowed from Smart Systems. So when you look at our school improvement calendar and then our solution design process, that's where the ideology or the foundation stems from. And what I'm not going to do is walk you through the 5 steps, but I think it's important to talk about the fact of how do we select this process, Well, we piloted, and we sent principals to receive SMART training, and they came back and trained their staff. And that staff said, we need this system, and we want to receive that same type of training. And so I also speak with the REA support saying, this is how we empower teachers to lead our improvement process. And so each of those protocols, those 5 steps, there's a specific protocol and training that goes along with that. And at the end, what we'll have is our schools aligned to those 4 critical areas with appropriate measurement systems in place to monitor those improvement efforts. And I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Hawkins and then Ms. Bradley.
I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of my teacher who was presented at the Ed Committee, but he was not able to make it tonight. And just on his behalf, I want to say that in support of this process, he was one of the teachers that was trained by me as I came back from the training and introduced it to the Guilford staff. He wanted to be able to say that without this systemic process, that we are unable to turn over the school improvement process to our professional communities of learning, which are our teacher teams, because they lack the structural support to move away from those pockets of excellence that we see in all of the buildings to the system-wide excellence that we promote. The second thing he wanted me to say is that this approach allows teachers' teams to strategically focus on those 4 key areas, which is the literacy, the numeracy, the college and career readiness, and the attainment, with a common vocabulary, timelines, processes, and measures that focus on student growth across time. And the feedback from the teachers that have used this process at Guilford High School is that they find it very user-friendly, and the focus becomes, it provides for them the what that needs to be done and the order to complete it in, but it leads the how to those engaging with the students on a daily basis. That is why the teachers that have worked with this process like it at Guilford High School.
So today I will talk about the professional development plan for the SMART system. There will be 2 phases. Phase 1 will be the leadership phase. We will focus on leadership the SMART way. We will have a principal as well as a building leader, approximately 110 participants, as well as some central office staff come together to learn about the framework of how they will lead their buildings in this process. The length of time is 4 half-day sessions, and the total costs for those 4 half-day sessions are approximately $129,000. Phase 1 also has an orientation, and that orientation is for approximately 200 participants, and it's for building-level cohorts. So building-level principals and team leaders will come together with some of their lead teachers, approximately 6 participants per school site, and some central office leaders also will participate in the orientation to prepare them for the SMART Team Academy training. The length of time for the orientation, approximately 2 half-day sessions, total cost $38,000. Phase 2 is the actual SMART Academy. The SMART School Improvement Academy are the 200 participants that participated in the orientation, building principals, teacher leaders, central office, and leadership team members. And there will be 2 cohorts. Cohort 1, 16 teams, and cohort 2, 16 teams. We also embedded into phase 2 a coaching module, and this will be about 36 participants. We want this to be a train the trainer, and so they will have some additional intense professional development days in order to train new staff that come in, as well as a variety of other members that didn't attend the training. And then SMART measurement system. And we always talk about accountability and how we measure if this is an effective program. Well, we'll have a SMART leadership team, and they will have 2 1.5-day sessions in which they will create and monitor the process of school improvement. Phase 2 costs $583,000 approximately for the SMART Academy, coach training, SMART management system. Total cost for phase 1 and phase 2, $751,000. Any questions? Yes.
And would you state where that money,
it will come from title funds,
which are designated for
Yes.
this professional development specific, for professional development?
Yes, thank you.
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
I'm trying to get my hands around what is the deliverable? This is training and development for staff. Is there some software program that's included in that? No. Okay, all right.
This is a solution design process that has established protocol that's recognized on a national basis as best practice.
Okay.
And so if you just want to simplify it, it's a way to guide school improvement. If we would say there's a way to lead, maybe draft legal papers, maybe there's a bad example probably, is there's a lot of different trainings or modes to do that. What we need is to provide some consistency with our school improvement so that we can empower those that haven't been empowered to lead our schools with improvement. And we have people in pockets guiding improvement. It's not systemic. And it's not something that we could pass on, share, monitor, cross-train, things of that nature.
Well, since I've been on the board, I've heard about school improvement plans that get done by principals or whatever, and teams of teachers or whatever, and then that plan gets kind of put on a shelf somewhere, and nothing ever happens with it. So how will this be different than that process?
Well, I think one of the things that we started off with that we borrowed from Smart Systems, and we said, hey, we really like your school improvement calendar. And so breaking that up into shorter bursts where there's accountability. But when I go to ask the question, what's your greatest area of need? If I all handed you the same data set, how you looked at that data would be different unless we had agreed upon protocol. And so what this allows us to do is begin that universal discussion that when you show up with that school improvement plan, that we've done the appropriate analysis, given the appropriate protocols. But then we have made that a living and breathing document through our smart measurement systems, because now we start to have a scorecard and a dashboard that we can monitor on a short-term basis and not once a year, because school improvement doesn't occur once a year.
I guess part of my question was, is there an automation thing that helps with this at all? Okay, all right. Ms. Jackson, you had your line up.
So, I guess I'm wondering about the deliverable too. I guess I want to know really what it is. And then my other question is, we've paid consultants to come in here and do school improvement plans, to train the principals, to do different things. How is this any different from what we've been paying folks to do?
Well, I want to be very clear about the deliverable. What the deliverable is a solution design process that's universally known and accepted and engaged upon. And what I can't do is speak to what the district's done before, because I haven't been here. But what I can say is that through this training, we're not talking about just leading principals. I think that's some of our school improvement issue. You know, school improvement doesn't occur in the principal's office. School improvement occurs in the classroom. School improvement occurs when our professional learning communities come together and focus on those core student objectives and outcomes that they choose to be meaningful and beneficial. But we have to empower them so they can make those decisions, and this is the solution design process to allow them to do that.
So, although I can appreciate that you've not been here in the past, I think it's important that you do know what's happened so that you can be able to speak to the system and why this system is better than what we've done in years past. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out, because I believe the last consultant...
I think I addressed that, but I want to be clear about it. I think the systems that have been addressed in the past is really focused on a core leader, and that being the principal. But at the end, we need to empower our instructional staff, our teachers, and this focuses on their training and their development and their empowerment.
I thought that's what our other ones did too. So you're saying the ones in the past did not do that? It only focused on the principals?
That's the evidence that I have, but I can tell you that I've spent a lot of time looking forward and looking at where we're currently at and listening to our teachers.
So how is this going to affect student achievement, growth? That's when I talk about deliverable, that's what I mean. What can I expect to see?
The outcome is we should see, I think, two. One is a more direct focus on the 4 board priorities that you've given, or the 4 areas of focus you've given the superintendent, that we have direct focus. Because I'm not sure that we have that focus systemically across our schools. And I think the second is we should see an increase in achievement.
Mr. Connor, you had your line in?
Yes, I did. I almost forgot about it. So I have 2 questions. One is fiscal and the other is educational. The fiscal question is, I want to fully understand the question Mrs. McCulloch asked. So this money, and she said, I think, title money? Yeah, Title I. So is that money that, excuse me, we would have used for something else, and now we're rerouting it to this?
It's money that we're using out of the professional development line item from our title funds.
Okay. And what is our total dollar amount for professional development right now, roughly? Just a round number. I don't want, you don't need to give me exacts.
Would you like me to include personnel, stipends, substitute teachers, purchase
If it's in the
services?
budget,
Okay, just from Title I, Title II, and of a professional development budget, over $9 million.
Okay, so we have a $9 million budget, and this is a shade under 10% of that. So are there things we're essentially, for lack of a better term, taken away from, or is this considered, that we used to do, the following two initiatives, we're no longer doing that, and we're replacing it with this initiative?
It aligns our professional development so that we're focused on one area. We're not giving away, we're not removing anything from our professional development. It is clearly aligned to our goals.
I believe that, but I guess my question is more, if we have a fixed dollar amount, which is $9 million, and now we're going to take $750 and do this, is there something, it would seem obvious to me that we're not doing that we used to do?
So professional development, I can say that we've spent some dollars on like discovery education, in which we've trained our staff several years, year after year, on discovery education. And so we're using some of those professional development dollars to do it for
Okay.
this.
So there are things, so I think the reason I'm asking this one is that what I'll say is my experience on similar kinds of programs is, actually one of the questions I'm hearing is what are the deliverables? And let me say it slightly differently, because you all are answering the question, but I think there's maybe a bigger question, which is, if we're sitting here in a year, what would we see as different? Now, I'm going to give you an opinion before I get your answer. I apologize, but having done programs like this myself, is that you want to be careful what you promise, because some of these things are a little bit more longer reaching, and there's really typically two problems. One is you don't have the right framework, and this sounds to me like a framework you're trying to put in place, and you're training people on that framework. So that's one problem. But I think one of the things I've heard, like from Mrs. Jackson, which I think makes sense, is that it has to have an impact, and where I've found issues is the commitment to the plans that people come up with. So the one piece of advice I have is, you've now got a framework, it costs money, which we all understand, but I think there has to be something that real people like me can understand in terms of timeframes and results that we would get from doing this, because I don't have a problem with it because you're the experts, but I would expect that after year one of doing this, we're going to get here, and then in year two, we're going to get here. And I would just like to see you address that as part of your process when you put this in place. So that would be both my comment and kind of question.
I think I have a better understanding because you put it in a little bit more in context. And so what we do is we have a school improvement process and a plan, and a calendar that we've adopted that aligns with Park. And so that's a change that we have coming around the corner. We also have the challenge of meeting student learning objectives for teachers in the new teacher evaluation. And so what we have to do is now a teacher has to, part of their evaluation is on student growth objectives. Well, we've not given them the tools to develop what are the right objectives and how to measure that. And so that's the danger if you said, well, Chip, I don't, I'm not sure that this is the right choice for us. I don't have a backup plan for how we prepare teachers for that environment. And so what are the deliverables? School improvement plans that are not done on a yearly basis, that are broken up into cycles that match up along with the Park assessment and the data that we receive from that. We may even say that we want to look at other student assessments that have more meaning to the teacher. They align with Park, but not the exact same, because at the end, teachers don't like to teach to standardized tests, but they will be required to teach to the Common Core standards in which there are localized assessments due. And so what we'd see is a transformation in how teachers interact with our school improvement plan. And I think, one of the discussions and positions that we're going to be in 2 years when all of our schools are trained, because it's $750,000, but that's over 2 fiscal years. It's only about, it's half that in each fiscal year. We'll be able to have some outputs on where our schools are at in regards to those 4 critical areas that you've identified. And so that's the critical objective. We need a way to monitor our movement on those 4 areas.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Well, the only thing I was going to say is that I really, and I totally understand the answer, and as I said, I have no problem with this framework, but I think having a lot of family and education, my gut sense is it's the commitment by the district for the things that they come up with that is the key. Again, I think this is a framework, and we're training people in that. And now when they come in, because Mr. Scrivano said it right, I'm sure tomorrow morning, if my wife hears about this conversation, I'll hear about all the SIPs that are sitting on the shelf where she's worked. And that's no knock on anybody, but that's the way it's worked. So I think my point is, let's make sure that if we're going to do this, that there is a commitment to what people come up with, and as you well said, it's tied to the achievements that we want. That's all I'm asking, so that every year when we come back, we know what we've done and the impact, because then I think, frankly, you'll get better participation also.
I would agree.
Ms. McCullough.
The reason this is the third time Ed Committee members would have heard this is because I think Ed Committee members had a hard time really grasping the whole concept of what this was, the importance, the depth of the funds involved in all the training. And so we had it brought back. And so the first time it came to Education Committee, they did not support the whole initiative. So we had the administration bring it back a second time, and I'm truly sorry, and thank you, Ms. Hawkins, for being here, but I'm truly sorry that the teacher is not here, because he was able to really clarify to the committee how having this framework enabled them to come up with a SIP plan and actually components at each level and the different areas of curriculum that the teachers were engaged in and were actually following through on. So perhaps when it is an action item at our next meeting, I'm not sure that gentleman can be here, but it gives you another level of information. And after the Education Committee had heard that presentation for the second time with that additional information, all but one member was fully supportive. And so that was a turnaround of a lot of people. So it is hard to grasp. It's a lot of money, and it's training people, and it's so that they can go forward and put together their own frameworks, but it's we do professional development where we train people all the time, and the really key component of this is that district-wide will be doing the same training, so everybody on the same page, so that at all the schools, he might have been at Guilford, but the teachers at Auburn are going to be using the same process, and so the engagement and that conversation that they can be had cross-school, it will be more consistent.
Well said.
Thank you. Mrs. Powers.
So in this third reading, I have not heard in the 2 previous ones how, what I did hear was, in terms of Common Core and assessments, but I had not heard you talk about the Danielson evaluation process. We just earlier tonight approved professional development for the Danielson training. So
Well, one training is saying, hey, here's what a student learning objective is. Here is how the teacher evaluation is comprised, and it gives you kind of the ground rules for the evaluation. It doesn't give you the solution now that I'm a teacher and I'm acting in real life, how I actually do that work. I just understand what that work is and where the end goal is. And so that's how they're related, but they're also different. Right now, I can tell you that across the state of Illinois, administrators and teacher leaders are learning about student learning objectives and getting prepared for the new evaluation system that will be mandated.
So I guess then in the prior agenda item, it indicated that it was going to be principals that were going to be attending that.
Okay.
So we don't have any teachers or teacher leaders? Okay. Okay. And then just when it comes back for approval, you've got two different numbers on page 1 and page 2 of the overview. So.
Ms. Jackson?
Can you explain this slide? There's a lot on here, and I don't understand this. There's writing underneath.
And so,
what does this mean?
What this slide is the solution design process, and had Mr. Wallace been here, and to be honest with you, we want to be patient with the board because this is technical, and Ms. Hawkins said, okay, here's the overview in the general concept. What this is this actually serves as an example, those deliverables. What does, if I'm on a school improvement team, what do those steps actually look like in a deliverable fashion? And so that's an example of those deliverables. When we take that solution design process and we apply it to real-time application, this is the manifestation out of that work.
Excuse me, so where we are now, that is the answer in the green above that? Is that what that means? I mean,
So that would have been, if we go back to this slide, step 2, create a SMART goal. After we gather and analyze data, and using that data analysis, there's a specific protocol which we need to teach staff. And so step 2 would have been create a SMART goal. How does that look in real life? And by the end of 2013-14 school year, at least 10 pilot teachers will have received peer feedback. What are the strategies we're using? Peer-to-peer observations. What are our plans? Teachers visit each other's classroom, document instructional data. Based off our pilot, we'll revise observation forms, scale up for 2014-15. I think that's what Dr. Wallace spent a great deal of time educating the Education Committee on.
Okay. This will come to our May 27th board meeting for a vote then. Are there any other new business items or agenda recommendations? Ms. Jackson, did you have one? No, I'm sorry. Ms. Powers.
So I have 3 follow-up items that I'm hoping to get answers to on the floor. The first one is for Mr. Schmidt, and the pool at Kennedy, is there any update on that? Will they have a pool next fall?
We are working on that. The engineer that was doing all the design work on there did go belly up, and we have to get another engineer to start working on it, pick up the slack on that.
So no guarantee as to whether we'll have a operational pool at Kennedy next fall?
Next school year, yes.
Okay.
We're very close on that. We had to get there, and the engineer had to re-engineer some of it because they wouldn't put their seal of approval on it because of somebody else's work. And yeah.
Okay. And then I'm not sure who this falls to. Can somebody give an update on the job shadowing, because that will be going into effect pretty soon? How many people did we fill all? I think it was 25 positions, or?
There are not, yeah, that's something I can get into the board update. I know this, there are not that many positions tied to, the only positions that have gone forth so far are the ones tied to the East job, and that meant that is 6 shadowing positions that will go forward, and that's something I can follow up with Kevin from our operations team and get the specifics.
Just a matter of timing as to when the work starts, that's the only work right now, but there will be more work
Well, and they're still in the
later.
process of selecting the job shadowers.
Thank you. And then the last one is, I'm totally lobbing this to you, Mr. Lewis. Have there been any issues with teacher paychecks that you could report on? Go ahead, grand slam that thing.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, gosh, this is just a great night for finance. Really, absolutely none. Of course, there's no such thing as a perfect payroll system or a perfect payroll process, but the reissue checks, I mean, are like down to nothing. Things are really going well.
My voicemail has been pretty quiet about that, so thank you.
Very good.
Mr.
Good
Keffer,
job.
Mr. Lewis, your whole team, thank you.
Okay. Any other further business for tonight? Ms. Jackson?
Yes, I have actually a follow-up question to what I asked at OPS. Did we find out, the administration, whether or not DLR is going to provide a written report of I don't know if it was an assessment, evaluation of what they did? Is there a written report coming?
A full documented report, no, it's just a process that we have them doing.
Okay. Is this the process? Because this is what
This
I
is
got in
a
my...
component,
Okay.
that's part of the process.
Okay, can I get the other part? I guess I'm asking because didn't we have like community meetings throughout the community? I'm sure that there was data collected. Why aren't we getting a report from them? I guess is my question. Can someone answer that, why we're
I
not
can.
getting a written report?
The board wanted to create a facilities task force to manage the work, and that's where that work has been done as opposed to the operations committee. The board level involvement will start once the community engagement process concludes, and the facilities task force makes a recommendation to the full board, which will occur at the earliest on June 10th, but could be as late as June 24th, depending on how long it takes the task force to come up with a recommendation. But again, this is what the board approved for a process, to have a facilities task force with 2 board members and other community members on it, and we are adhering to that board-approved process.
Process is one thing. I'm not talking about the process. I'm talking about the written documentation that came from that process. That's what I'm asking about. Because that process is what drafted this document, right?
You'll have information that is presented to the board as part of that process when the recommendation comes from the facilities task force, and that will be included as part of it. That will be there.
Any other business for tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like a copy of the purchase order for these. And then, these were mailed out. Ours actually came yesterday. Our mail runs late. By the time we got this, 5 meetings have taken place. So are these going out at certain times? Is there a reason why they didn't get out before so people would know about all of the dates?
There were requested changes from the facilities task force to include all the specific dates, which delayed the release. And so the earlier draft, there was some back and forth on that issue. And so with mail delays, some individual community members got it as early as, I believe, Monday, and some got it later. So it all depended on where you were in the mail batch. We did publicize in other ways, and there still are almost, I would guess, 20 community meetings to attend, 2 this evening that I mentioned earlier, or 2 this week, excuse me, and 1 next week in the evening, in many neighborhood schools. Everyone's invited, even if it's not your school, to attend the meeting, and the other community meetings that will occur, we certainly want to invite community members to attend those as well.
Okay, and just so I'm clear, I will not get a written report, right? You said that I will get something when board input is needed? Is that what I'm understanding? When my input is needed, then I'll be delivered something, a document?
Ms. McCullough?
What we have requested as a committee from DLR has been a series of data and recommendations and not a specific report. We've used all that data. Much of it is already on the website under the Better Schools piece. There is additional information going on there, such as the building conditions. That was one piece of data that we asked for. And all that information, could be put into a report, but instead will be brought forward as part of the representation of as to what the decision, or how the committee came to the decision that it comes to in terms of what it recommends to the board.
Any other questions or business for tonight? If not, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned at 9:38.